Well, we've had the reactions across the country, but to help us delve deeper and understand this policy proposal, we are joined in studio by the NDC's National Deputy Youth Organizer, Osman Ayariga, and the Programs Manager at the Youth Bridge Foundation, Joyce Nyame. Lady and gentlemen, good afternoon. Thanks for joining.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Well, yes. So let me start with you, Joyce. I mean, you've heard the promises there. You've heard the NDC say they would want to do if they are elected, you know, into power. As a youth, how do you receive these promises?
Okay, so I'll first speak as a young person and also as someone leading programmatic interventions with a youth-focused organization. I think these policy frameworks are laudable. The fact that there is a thought for the need to even have a separate policy document on young people, that's a laudable intervention. And also the choice of timing, the day the policy was launched, that's also something thoughtful, International Youth Day, to think that the issue of young people are coming to the forefront, and then policymakers are trying to catch the vibe, so to say, to make sure that the things that we talk about are put into policy frameworks. That's very important.
Okay. Now, the NDC said on education, they will scrap academic fees for level 100 students through the No Fee Stress Initiative, provide sustainable dedicated funding for free SHS policy, to improve food quality for free SHS and expand access by building more infrastructure in already existing secondary schools, to complete the e-blocks that they started, to abolish the double track system, to construct hostels for students on tertiary campuses at affordable rates to address the accommodation challenge, to abolish teacher licensure exam, increase access to quality education.
These are laudable. And then from the clips we had watched before this interview, these are some of the issues that people are talking about. So these are things that are happening. People are worried about education, the educational system, in terms of the content, in terms of the turnout, accommodation. People are moving from one community to the other to pursue academic excellence, and then there's the need for them to be fed. There's the need for accommodation. But for me as a young person and also someone with a youth-focused organization, what we want to say is there is a need for us to have an accompanying implementation plan. So this is the policy framework. The manifesto is a policy framework. There's a need for us to see, in terms of commitments, the implementation plan as well as the finances that will come with the implementation plan.
Osman, so you've had young people there speaking about we want more, and even thinking that this is probably a charade. You want to help us understand. For example, if you say you want to provide sustainable dedicated funding for free SHS policy, what are you looking at?
Thank you very much. And I want to say good afternoon to you and good afternoon to my sister. And also wish all youth of this country who are living in a state of disappointment and a state of hopelessness, happy belated International Youth Day. I would also want to say thank you to all the young people who followed keenly the NDC launched its manifesto as far as the youth is concerned, so the National Youth Manifesto, which is novel, which is the first of its kind in the history of this country. And to actually launch it on the International Youth Day means how well the NDC thinks of the youth of this country. And of course, to the flag bearer of the National Democratic Congress, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, the incoming president of Ghana come 2025. I also want to say a big thank you to him for making time the whole of yesterday. You know, he has a very busy schedule with the campaigns, and he had to cut the campaign just to give us a whole day, 24 hours of his time to interact with the youth. The first was the campaign launch, the manifesto launch at the UPSA auditorium, which we launched this National Youth Manifesto. And the second program was also at the Bukom Boxing Arena, where he met about 5,000 young people from all sectors of life, from diverse backgrounds, from different businesses, different academic backgrounds. And they asked teaching questions that concern the youth and questions that actually affect their lives. And he stood on his feet for 3 hours. He answered every
we all saw that, but I'm asking
every question. Yes. So
not
I
people,
I just need to
exactly because of time. So
yes, congratulate and thank all the people that came there. Now, if we go into the NDC's Youth Manifesto, there are a couple of things we decided to speak about. You and I understand and we appreciate the current difficulty that the current free SHS is being bedeviled with. And we've continuously had various debates and various discussions. And you remember His Excellency John Dramani Mahama has stated time without number that the first thing he has to do with the free SHS is to review it. And in reviewing it, what do? He needs to sit with stakeholders. He needs to sit with interest parties. He needs to sit with parents. He needs to even sit with students, teachers, and everyone within the educational sector. And we need to churn out how we all are going to make it better. There has been various proposals as to whether some should pay, some shouldn't pay, it should be optional. And he says that, hey, it's not for us to forcefully decide for you. But the most important thing is for us to have dedicated funding for this free SHS. It's not just, okay, for us, every year we are always looking for budgetary allocation, either from the left or the right, right, looking at certain funds, etc., etc. Instead of that, we need to have a dedicated budgetary allocation for the free SHS, and that is how we should review. That's the first step in reviewing it.
But already there's a dedicated budget funding for the policy.
We have issues with it. We have issues with it, and that's
so how different are you going to do it?
You may have a budgetary allocation, but if it's not dedicated, then what it means that it's within the whims and caprices of the finance minister as and when he wants to release the funds. Remember, in not too distant past, the issues of caterers and food, and some of the foods were being colored with color, etc., etc. That's because you do not have a dedicated source of funding. It's as and when the finance minister wants to release funding, then he releases funding. And if funds are used for other things, then you realize that there's that short a chain so far as funding is concerned. So we're looking at a dedicated source of funding. Don't also forget that we started the e-block project. And we're telling you that we need to continue aggressively so far as the e-blocks are concerned, because free SHS also has a lot to do with access. And access also has a lot to do with rebuilding more community day schools. Remember, we started the fact that we needed to build more community day schools before we kickstart the free SHS aggressively. Otherwise, there was going to be a choke in the boarding sector. And that is exactly what we are experiencing. The lack of beds, like we are unable to feed students, etc., etc. So we need to go back to the drawing board and look at the access before we even go back again and look at how we're going to make the free SHS better. So we're going back to the access, and we started the e-blocks. So we are going to aggressively complete our 200 e-blocks, which is supposed to be the community day schools. Then we understand that beyond the free SHS, there's also the difficulty of students entering the university.
Yeah, we'll get there. But the reason why I'm interested in the dedicated source of funding for free SHS is because, in the past, we've all had a discussion about whether parents should pay or not. So when we hear the NDC say we should have a dedicated funding, it's quite interesting. So what is that source of funding? That's what I want to understand.
For now, I cannot tell you that the source of funding is either going to be from GET Fund, or it's going to be from Consolidated Fund, or it's going to be from the Oil Fund, or ESTRA, etc. But the most important thing is for you to believe that you need a dedicated source of funding. You need to understand that this is your policy direction. This is what you need to do. Now, when you get in there, then you now understand, based on the nooks and crannies, which of the fundings you can purposely dedicate.
But at least for now,
which of the funds you can purposely dedicate to it. As it stands now, even GET Fund has been collateralized. Most of the funds have been collateralized. And this is where we are as a country. You get a point. So it would not be in the best place for us to say that we're going to, and as part of even our manifesto, we told that we are trying as much as possible to decollateralize the GET Fund, to restore it to its original mandate.
Exactly. That's why I wanted to. I'm trying to find out from you.
So we need
because
to
collateralize
it.
By now,
for us to be able to even get dedicated source of funding, we need to also decollateralize GET Fund.
You've made that point.
All our funds have been collateralized.
You've made that point. But
all our funds have been collateralized.
We know that we have the annual budget funding amount.
Yes.
We know that at least we have royalties coming from the mining companies. Or mineral exploitation. You've mentioned the decollateralization of the GET Fund. That's why I want to ask. I mean, I'm sure you are part of this process to arrive at this conclusion. So when you were talking about dedicated source of funding,
when you talk about dedicated source of funding, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's coming from one pocket.
Okay.
It could come from a pool. that you know that you are dedicating these percentages to them. But the most important thing is for you to agree that you're going to have a dedicated source of funding. You get a point?
So you tell us when you get to that government.
You don't need to say that we are going to pick only from Get Fund. No. You don't need to tell that you're going to pick only from ESLA. No. But the most important thing is for you to agree, based on your policy direction, that you all need a dedicated source of funding, and that will solve more than 80% of the problem so far as free SHS is concerned, before we go into the quality, before we go into access, before we go into the issues of accommodation, etc., etc. Okay. So if we're able to decollateralize most of these funds, we'll have the free space to operate. Now, the next issue has to do with the issue of the free level 100 academic fees. Some schools call it level 100, some schools call it first year. Some schools call it, yes, first year level 100.
We use it interchangeably.
Interchangeably, so that
100 student or
level 100 or a first year student. We understand the difficulty most students go through, and even parents. Most students gain admission into schools. They're unable to meet the admission payment deadline. And for that matter, most of them forfeit their admissions. And this time around, John Dramani Mahama and the NDCs saying that, okay, in order to enable students to alleviate people from most of this stress and this poverty, government is seeking to absorb the first year's admission fees so that you do not forfeit your admission due to the fact that you're unable to pay your fees. And we've done the computation. However, as a continuing student, then you'll be eligible for the Students' Loan Trust Fund Plus. Then you can continue as a student as far as the Student Loan Trust Fund Plus is concerned. Because sometimes, before you gain admission, you cannot actually apply for the Student Loan Trust Fund. You need to be a student. That's what the eligibility criteria. So we need to do that before you can access the Student Loan Trust Fund. So we're saying that we will enable you, will help you through this policy so that you can gain admission to university. So you shouldn't be left out because of your inability to afford admission fees. You should go in there. If you are unable to gain admission, then it should be other criteria or other requirements, such as maybe your grades, etc., etc. People have asked, how are you, how much do you know the costing, etc., etc. And we have said that, yes, unlike our colleagues in the NPP who have been asked several times about the costing, etc., and they've told us that, I remember the last time Nanado was asked about the costing of free SHS, he told the journalist that he'll come and tell with the Ghanaian people. He came to Ghana, we asked him, he never told us, and to date he hasn't told us. But we have told that we know the cost, we have done the mathematics, and we know where we can cut in order to cushion or fund it. We've told you that. The cost involved for financing annually the first year, so far as academic fees is concerned, will sum up to about 275 million Ghana cedis. And we're telling you that as government machinery, this year alone, government machinery is spending 2 billion Ghana cedis. And we're telling that as a government, we are not going to spend 2 billion Ghana cedis on government machinery. Cutting that government machinery expenditure, even by 25%, we'll be able to fund this policy we are looking at.
So is that how you're going to fund it?
Yes, that is what we are seeking to do. That government machinery, and John Dramani Mahama has said time without number, that we are going to run the leanest government. We're going to cut profligate expenditure. We are going to be frugal. We are going to try as much as possible to reduce any excessive spending.
So if I understand you, if I understand you, you are going to cut down on government spending and then you redirect it into the.
Yes,
but I heard you.
Classical example.
But I also heard the explanation that the source of funding for that particular policy will be coming out of the GET Fund when you decollateralize it.
Yeah, those are other sources. I haven't heard people say GET Fund. But as part of, GET Fund is also in charge of funding education. And that's why we're also looking at decollateralizing it. But we are also giving you a classical example of places where we can cut. And that has to do with government expenditure. We've told you time without number that the 2 billion Ghana cedis that is being used this year as government expenditure, even if we reduce it by 25%, it should be able to cater.
Well, I want to be able to. I want to be able to hold you to account when you come to power.
Yes.
That's why I want you to explicitly tell me where the source of funding is going to come from. You are saying that it will come from the cut in government expenditure on the executive. That's the money you're going to redirect into taking care of the first years.
It can.
That's it. That's what your party has decided.
It can be used.
No, I'm not looking for can. I'm
no,
looking
it can be used.
What you've decided to do.
It can be used. What I'm trying to tell you is that it can be used. That money, the cut in government expenditure can be used to fund it.
No.
However, no, I'm coming. Don't forget that as it stands now, Get Fund has already been collateralized.
Yeah, I get it.
And we are in a very tight corner. So there's an available option, which is that government has decided that we can reduce government spending and use it to fund the education so far as
when you were going through.
However, we are looking at decollateralizing Get Fund. And don't forget, Get Fund's original mandate is to fund education. So if in the long run we are able to decollateralize Get Fund, and Get Fund can be used to also fund it, that is fair enough. But even in the absence of Get Fund, where it has been collateralized, government machinery spending, which is currently at 2 billion Ghana cedis, would and can be used to fund the free first year.
So if I get you, there are two funding sources you're looking at: cutting down in government expenditure and to redirect it, and or using Get Fund to fund the
No, Get Fund ideally is for funding tertiary education.
I get it, yes.
That we need to understand, simplicity. However, we are telling you that so far as this policy is concerned, one of the places we can look at is to cut government spending. We are not planning on spending 2 billion Ghana cedis on government machinery. No, we are cutting government spending, and part of it can be used to fund the 275 million Ghana cedis you're looking at, so far as the free first year education is concerned.
You know, when you tell me can, it can mean that, well, I can do it or I cannot do it. But if you use shall, then I'll sit here, cut this tape of yours, and play it back to you and say, you said you shall use
the underlying or basic principle is that it must be funded.
Okay.
So if I tell you it shall be used, and tomorrow we don't use government machinery, but government machinery spending has been reduced, and we go and use maybe another source, then you say that even though it's being funded, I lie to you. That it can be used.
Okay.
So don't.
Let me come to the youth bridge person. Satisfied with his responses, the explanation he's giving you?
So the struggle with the choice of words underlines my initial statements about the need for an implementation plan. So I feel all these things would come and will be explicit in a plan like that, where the party will be forced to really put into clear terms how they are going to fund it. So as you are saying, we can hold them accountable to it. So as much as we are lauding the initiative, I mean, these conversations are also bringing to the fore the need for another broader and very significant conversation as to how we are going to do it.
We are going to do it, okay. Osman is still here. He's helping us appreciate what the NDC wants to do when it wins power. Osman, let's still go through the other things you want to do. You've spoken about the e-blocks. You've also okay, you haven't spoken about it, but I guess that's what you want to do. Abolish the double track system because of the e-blocks, right?
Yes.
Is that what you do?
Yes. Yes.
Because you complete a lot of them.
Yeah, this is not the first time we are abolishing double track system. I think we started abolishing the shift system, the days, I think morning and afternoon school, the CITO system. I remember we started abolishing all schools under trees under the NDC. We constructed, I think, over 1,006 classroom blocks to eradicate schools under trees. So we have a track record. Okay. We have a track record of abolishing shift system. We abolished the shift system with the basic school, and now the shift system has shifted to the secondary school. And I tell you that we are the masters of abolishing shift system. And the same formula, the fact that we were able to dedicate resources to building 6 classroom blocks to be able to eradicate the shift system in the basic level. Okay. You should trust us again. We are the same people that started construction of the E-blocks. Trust us. Yes, we plan on building 204 years. No, that was the first 4 years of John Dramani Mahama. We started about 125. I think those that were completed about 40-something. The figure keeps, everybody keeps giving a different figure. But a good number was completed. Around 42 or 43 were completed.
I think
but some argue that we said 42, it wasn't completed, but we know we completed about 42. About 90-something of them, about 105 of them have still not been completed by this government. I remember the last time a chief complained, the president told him to go and complete it himself. we all understand some of these problems. We are the people who are used to building these projects that would bring people out of poverty, this project that will eradicate the shift system. So it is something we have done before. We will continue to do it, and we shall do it again. We will construct more e-blocks. And trust me, if the 200 e-blocks, when completed, will not be enough, we will continue to construct more, because development is continuous.
Why not expand infrastructure in the existing schools, but want to build different schools?
You remember we brought up the policy that we should have more community day schools due to the proximity to the villages. Because you see, when students go to the boarding house, it is more expensive, because some need to travel a long distance. Some need to go to the boarding school. You need to buy mattresses, you need to buy etc., etc. And that was the thinking behind the community day schools. So that if I live in Adenta, I don't have to travel all the way to Takrady to access secondary education. If I live in Adenta and there's a community day SHS there, I just walk home, I walk to school, etc. So that's why we're looking at developing more community.
Okay. All right. Let me take you through it. You want to construct hostels for students on tertiary campuses. Someone says, we all know how the economy is struggling to recover, right? Why don't you create the enabling environment for private people to invest in that area, but you want government to concern itself with hostels when private persons can do it?
No, we put it out there, carry out an aggressive bed for all program with the private sector to build accommodation facilities on tertiary campuses to provide bed spaces for students and arrest.
So it is not government constructing hostels?
We aggressively engage in private sector.
Okay.
Because most of the universities have the land, and most private people want to come in there and invest so far as the hostel business is concerned. But the universities are very jealous about protecting their land, which is understandable, because they believe that maybe after a while the private person will take their land, etc. They don't want to reduce.
So what do you intend to do?
So that's why government needs to step in to give them that security. In other jurisdictions, what happens is that government steps in sometimes as a guarantor, that you build your hostel, you run your hostel for a number of years. After that, it's given to it's reverted to the university. So it becomes the property of the university. In other jurisdictions, that is what is being done. So this is
what would be your formula? You've given us other jurisdictions. What is the plan? What do you intend to do?
Yeah, we're looking at bed for all. So we are looking at yes, we are looking at engaging the private sector. Now you see when you are engaged. I'm coming.
Hold on. You've mentioned that one, but you brought in something.
You see, yes,
you brought in something.
I gave
the universities are jealous of their land. So what do you want to do?
I gave you one scenario. I gave you one scenario in other jurisdictions. What is being done and how most universities feel that.
No, so I'm coming. Most universities.
Let me land. I beg your pardon.
Most we don't have all the time. What do you want to do?
I agree with you. I agree with you. I'm coming to what we're going to do.
So come to it. What do you want? Because you've explained that one. What do you want to do?
What we're going to do is to engage private entities. And those private entities are expected to come and build the hostels, run it for some time, make their money, then it's given back to the investor. Because you see, there's a number of years which you can run it and recoup your investment. Because it's about you putting.
So it's a build, operate, and transfer.
Yes,
BOT.
Yes.
Is that what you plan to do?
That's what we plan to do. So it's not as if it's going to be a private hostel forever and ever. No, it's supposed to later be the property of the university. So if it's a 10-year, 20-year, 50-year, at the long run, it becomes part of the university. That's what we are seeking to do with private entities.
Okay, I'm grateful to you for joining. But my last question to you: with these e-blocks, you have 4 years. Which year would you complete these blocks for students to have access to them?
We have 4 years.
Yeah.
Like we started during our tenure. Within the first year, I think we started about 20. The next year, we started about 30. It's supposed to be in phases. And remember, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama said that it's not just for the e-blocks, but all uncompleted projects started by previous governments. There's going to be some attention given to it.
Because you say you want to increase access to the free education.
Yes.
That's what I'm asking.
Yes.
Which year do you want to complete the remaining day schools so that people can have access to them? Because you want to.
Well, the next NDC government, when elected into power, we have 4 years to implement everything we put in our manifesto. So within the 4 years, we should be able to implement everything. We don't have anything beyond 4 years. Beyond 4 years, we are going back to seek the mandate of the people. So within 4 years, we should be able to implement everything in our manifesto. And I assure you, I guarantee you that in the NDCs manifesto, in the youth manifesto, in the main manifesto, within 4 years of the tenure of John Dramani Mahama, we are going to implement everything in it.
All right. Osman Ayarga is Deputy National Youth Organizer of the NDC. Thank you for coming. Joyce, I mean, just before you leave, you listened to him. You've not listened to the MPP. But what message is the youth sending to these political parties ahead of 2024?
So the message is simple. First of all, we would like to tell the young people that we should celebrate, because there is the urgency that these policymakers are realizing that they need to focus on us. So NDC has come out. We are looking out for the other political parties. So we are watching closely. But we also urge the political parties that it's urgent, that there is a need for conscious effort to address the developmental needs of the young people. Okay. So we are watching closely, and then we applaud the NDC, and then we are also urging others to also come. Then we have variety, then we have informed decisions during the elections.
All right, Joyce, I'm grateful. Joyce Nyame, Programs Manager for Youth Bridge Foundation. They sponsor our election headquarters. We'll take a quick break here. On the pulse, we'll be back with more. Please do stay.